Hello again.
Good morning again.
There you go. Okay.
161. So how long are you staying?
Sorry,
How long are you staying?
I'm going to be here till September, first week in September, end of the week.
For next week?
So I'll be here next week as well. Yeah.
And then you're coming back or you're going
And
somewhere
hopefully we'll
else?
come back. Maybe we'll stop off in New York a little bit, see the other grandkids, and then we'll come home.
Okay, that's good.
Yep.
Who is there? Oh, Chaim. Yaakov, good evening. Bernie,
Hello.
Chaim.
There. Yeah, I'm here.
Hello.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Oh, so that one, that's not the right one.
Right.
That's for your phone.
161.
Correct.
Mario, you're right again.
On page 161, asking someone who has not accepted Shabbos to perform malacha. We have been discussing the mitzvah of Tosefah Shabbos and accepting Shabbos early. What is the halacha if one accepts Shabbos early, but then realizes he forgot to perform an important malacha? May he ask another Jew who has not yet accepted Shabbos to perform it on his behalf? Are the halachas similar to those of asking Gentiles to perform malacha on one's behalf, Amir La'akum? The Rashba addresses this case and writes that as long as it's before Shkia, right, before Ben Hashmoshes, because Ben Hashmoshes starts with Shkia, you can ask another Jew to perform a malacha for you, right? You accepted it earlier, 18 or 20, we learned last week, either 18 to 20 minutes prior to Shkia. And then let's say your car is parked on the wrong side of the street. It's going to get a ticket. And you can ask somebody who has not accepted Shabbos to move the car for you. The Mehar Shamina, the Yisrael Shekibel of Shabbos Kodim Shetachashecha, a Jew who accepted Shabbos before Shkia, Mutter Lomar LeYisrael Chaveiro Lasas Lo Malacha. He's permitted to ask a fellow Jew to do something for him. Malacha Plonis Holvi Nasis Beheter Loisa Oisa. Osa. The one who's doing it has not accepted Shabbos yet, so he's doing it Beheter. The Gemara that the Rajba was talking about permits Ruvain to ask Shimon to guard Ruvain's produce if it is inside Shimon's tchum. You're only allowed to walk 2,000 amas outside the city. So even if it's not within Reuven's tchum, Reuven will in exchange guard Shimon's produce, which is within Reuven's tchum, but not within Shimon's tchum. Thus, it is permitted for Reuven to ask Shimon to perform an act that is permitted for Shimon, even though it's forbidden for Reuven, and vice versa. The Ran disagrees with this Rashba. But the Shulchan Aruch paskins like the Rashba. Yesh Omrim. Shemishav Kabel Lav Shabbos Kodim Shechashecha Mutter Lo Mal Yisrael Chaver Losas Bloch. He's referring to the Rashba, and he brings it down as a Yesh Omrim. The Mishnah Berurah explains that no prohibition exists to ask another Jew to perform an action that is permitted for that individual. The Kivan Shel Chaver Mutter Ein Isra Mir Shayach B'zeh. The Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa records this halacha and explains that it applies even to an entire tzibur who has accepted Shabbos. They can ask an individual who plans to accept Shabbos with a later minion to perform halacha on their behalf. Bein ha'isha mekabelas es Shabbos badlokas neiros. Whether a woman has accepted Shabbos when she lit neiros, v'chein ha'yochid ha'mekabel yadei tefilo al yadei dibur acher, or just a regular Jew who has accepted Shabbos either because he davened early, or he accepted Shabbos through an amira. O shagomer belibo lekabel Shabbos. He felt internally that he was makabel Shabbos. V'ter migia shas ben hashmoshes, before Shkia, murtalem lomar liyisrael acher, he's permitted to tell another Jew, sheterem kibel Shabbos, who has not accepted Shabbos yet, lasot avuram kol davar, can do. They can ask the Jew to do whatever they want. Even if it's a doraisa for Shabbos. Let's say the whole tzibur was accepted Shabbos. That they davened after Plaga Mincha to accept Shabbos early. Another Jew's going to daven at a shul that's going to daven at the regular time. They can ask him to do something that is forbidden for them to do. Mincha preceding Shabbos.
Ernie, but would they be able to ask a goy that? I don't think so.
Of course, you can ask a goy. If you can ask a Jew, achos kama v'kama, you can ask a goy. Remember, it's not Shabbos yet; it's Shkia. Shabbos starts with Shkia. Somebody accepted Shabbos earlier.
I get it, but it's very stuck.
They're
The
saying
guy Shabbos. He's
but the Jew is not makabel Shabbos early. Remember, we said Me'ikar Adin, as long as you're makabel 30 seconds or a minute before Shabbos, you fulfill Tosefes Shabbos. So you don't have to accept. Our women light 18 minutes before. We don't accept Shabbos. We go to shul, and we don't accept Shabbos until we say Mizmor Shel Yom Shabbos. 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later.
Okay.
So alachas kama v'kama can ask a goy. Now, once Shabbos starts, you can't ask a Jew to do anything, not a doraisa, not a rabbanon. You're allowed to ask a non-Jew in certain situations to do something for you on Shabbos. And we're going to learn that in depth. There's a whole siman in Shulchan Aruch about Amir La'akum. What are you allowed to tell a goy to do for you on Shabbos, and how can you do it, and what circumstances can you do it? But this is all before Shabbos. This is all before Shkia. But you've accepted Shabbos early. Okay. What about Mincha prior to Kabbalah Shabbos? Ideally, one should fulfill the mitzvah of Tosefes Shabbos by accepting Shabbos between 15 to 30 minutes before sunset. As we mentioned, women who light candles indeed accept Shabbos at that time. On the other hand, Mincha does not usually begin in most shuls until after candle lighting. Men who recite Mincha must therefore rely on the minimal fulfillment of the mitzvah, accepting Shabbos only a few minutes before sunset. We just mentioned this in our discussion with Walter. Most of us, we could accept Shabbos early, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, when our wives accept it. If we drive to shul, we obviously don't accept it. And then we're accepting Shabbos a few minutes before Kabbalah Shabbos, before Shkia. This is because according to Shulchan Aruch, one who's accepted Shabbos upon himself can no longer recite the weekday mincha. So we dafka do not accept Shabbos because we haven't done mincha. Imanav Kibel Shabbos imohem. If a person has accepted Shabbos early, Eino yochel yispal tfilas home. Ela yispalo arvish time. We know that, for example, let's say you miss a mincha, so you have to daven. We say tashlumim. You have to say Shemona Esrei twice during Ma'ariv. So, in someone who, for whatever reason, accepted Shabbos and then realized he hadn't daven mincha, he cannot daven mincha. He'll have to say two Shemona Esreis during Ma'ariv. The Mishnah Berurah explains that the word responded, it says im ana, right, refers to responding to Baruch, which qualifies as accepting Shabbos. Therefore, if you responded to Baruch, you already daven Ma'ariv, you can't daven mincha. Hainu, sha'ana Baruch, v'asau ba'atzmo kodesh, he made himself already Shabbosdik, b'niyas Baruch. How can he go backwards and daven a vachadik davening like mincha mishum hachi less later content? There's no solution except he has to daven Ma'ariv twice. For this reason, mincha should ideally be scheduled with enough time to complete it and still accept Shabbos a few minutes before sunset. What does one do if one's shul does not usually complete mincha in time or is running late? Of course, we at Yavna have no problem. 6:30, if we call mincha at 6:30, and shki is not till 7:30 or 7:45, you have plenty. You can daven mincha, and you have plenty, and you're after plaga mincha. Or you could be even before plag, and then you're Makabel Shabbos, and you've been Makabel Shabbos 15 to 30 minutes earlier. In the summertime, we are Makabel Shabbos early every week. But what do you do if a shul does not usually complete mincha or is running late? How can you fulfill the mitzvah of Tosefes Shabbos? The Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa indicates that even if the silent Amida is completed a few minutes before sunset, one can already accept Shabbos at that time, even before the Chazan has finished. The Chazaras Hashatz is finished. If the minyan starts so late that one cannot even complete the silent Amida a few minutes before sunset, then the Shmir Shabbos rules that one should recite mincha earlier alone without a minyan in order to be able to accept Shabbos with Tosefes Shabbos in time. Imuroeh shatzibur atid l'sayem et filat mincha belachash rak im mashkia. Based on when the shul scheduled mincha, he's going to see that by the time they finish their silent Shemona Esrei, it's already going to be pashkia. Mutav sheyispal b'echidus, he should have mincha at home. The Kabbalah Shabbos of Neashkia, Masher Levatel Mitzvahs Tosefes Shabbos. The chiyuv of Tosefes Shabbos overrides davening mincha with a minyan. However, yes.
Question. Does you initially said that how do you accept Shabbos? By responding to Baruch Hu. Yet you're now saying that it's possible for someone to just mentally accept Shabbos.
Yes, you can.
Or
when you say Mizmor Shirli HaShabbos after L'Chadodi, you don't have to do it by Baruch Hu. Most of us do it by Mizmor Shirli HaShabbos. You could do it even not as tefillah. You could be Goymer Belibo. Or you can say, I accept Shabbos now.
Well, the time between Mincha and reaching Baruch Hu is often in shuls that sing for 30 minutes or longer.
No, so we're talking about, let's say Mincha is now finished, and you still have time before Shkia, right? In the summer months, Bernie, it's never a problem. We have an hour before Shkia. So, okay, but let's say we're davening bismano. And you have to daven, you have to call mincha early enough that we will have 2 or 3 minutes prior to Shkia to be Makabel Shabbos. There we're not going to be waiting until Mizmor Shirli Yom Shabbos, because then there's no Tosefet. Tosefet Shabbos means you're Makabel Shabbos minutes before Shkia. If you finished your mincha 2-3 minutes before Shkia and didn't do anything, and then you started Kabbalah Shabbos, and now you said Mizmor Shirli Yom Shabbos 20 minutes after Shkia, you were not Makayim this mitzvah of Tosefet Shabbos.
So it's a mental exercise, accepting Shabbos. That's
Yeah,
the way
you can accept Shabbos mentally. You can be Gomer Belibo. Or you can say, I accept Shabbos now. Now, not all poskim agree with the Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa that one should recite Mincha alone rather than complete the silent Amida too late to fulfill Tosefet Shabbos. Some poskim, such as the Tzitz Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer Waltenberg, permit reciting Mincha after accepting Shabbos, despite the ruling of the Shulchan Aruch. They argue that the ruling of the Shulchan Aruch that one may not recite Mincha after accepting Shabbos applies where the whole congregation accepts Shabbos. But if an individual accepts Shabbos earlier than the Tzibur, he may still recite Mincha. Rav Waldenberg uses a ruling of the response of Zera Emet. The Zera Emet was asked about repeating the Amida if one forgot Yala v'Yava and Chol HaMoed in his mincha, and already accepted Shabbos on his own. And he ruled that one may still repeat mincha for the reasons given in the text. Rav Waldenberg writes that the same applies if one had not yet recited mincha at all. The Piskei Tshuva takes a similar approach that the Shulchan Aruch refers to accepting the full holiness of Shabbos together with the tzibur, which is more strict than accepting Tosefet Shabbos as an individual, for which one may be lenient with respect to certain halachos. The Piskei Tshuva assumes that many communities recite mincha right before sunset rely on this understanding, and that the individuals accept Tosefet Shabbos before reciting mincha. So some people accept Shabbos before the mincha because they know that maybe their mincha will proceed beyond Shkia, and it's not a problem according to Rav Eliezer because you've only accepted Shabbos as an individual. It's much more chomer if the tzibur accepted it, and that's what the Shulchan Aruch is talking about, that you can't go back and daven mincha. Let's see the Tzitz Eliezer. Shebenidonenu, in our case, Shekibin Lav Shabbos b'yochid v'niskar lachem became shelo yispal mincha. Somebody accepted Shabbos. He recognized, he remembered he didn't daven mincha. Yachol shapir lispal l'aded mincha shel chol. So he says befeirush that you can still daven mincha. Rav Ovadia Yosef in the Chazon Ovadiahu offers a different solution, that the primary component of Tosefet Shabbos is not like what Bernie was now saying something, or actually a decision in your mind. It's just refraining from performing malacha. Therefore, one can accept Shabbos prior to reciting mincha, stipulating that one's acceptance is limited to the prohibition of malacha and does not include other aspects of the acceptance, such as the halacha that one may no longer recite mincha. You don't accept that aspect of Shabbos. If someone is davening mincha late, where it's not going to give him time to accept Shabbos before Shkia. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to abandon this issue of Tosefet Shabbos. Kivin sheshabbos malacha, he rested from malacha. If like what Bernie says, he's going to make a statement, I'm accepting Shabbos. You can say, I'm accepting Shabbos just to the aspect that I'm not going to do malacha. But the other aspects, like this aspect of, I can't go back and daven mincha, I haven't accepted that. Points out Rav Ovadia Yosef that since the ikar aspect of Tosefet Shabbos is to stop working, Asur b'Shabbos ain't tfilas hamincha mafkia mitzvah tosaf. Just because you daven doesn't necessarily is mafkia you from this Kabbalah of Shabbos early. Okay? So Rav Eliezer Melamed suggests a fourth approach, that accepting Shabbos mentally may be effective in this situation, but still allow for reciting mincha. Although Rav Melamed acknowledges that this is the common custom in many places, he also writes that in his opinion, if one knows that the minyan will begin late, it is preferable to recite mincha alone earlier, which is similar to the Shmir Shabbos. Yesh oimrim, shebemikra kazeh, yesh lekabel es haShabbos machshava b'lvad. He accepts Shabbos in his mind. V'zeh yikabel es kol Yisur haShabbos v'kay mitzvos tosef haShabbos. Aval kiven shlo hizkir zos bepeh, he didn't enunciate it by his mouth. Adayin yemuter lo lispal mincha. A Kabbalah belay would not prevent him from being able to daven mincha. V'chein minig revach, that if Shkia is coming close, shemashkia miskarez v'adayin lo lispal mincha. Mekablim tosef Shabbos b'dibur or b'machshava. You accept Shabbos either through an enunciation or through your thought. V'achakach mispalim mincha shel chol. V'gam lenoshim muter b'diavad lispal mincha achar adlakas neiros. Women, after they were accepting Shabbos with adlakas neiros, can also daven mincha. Aval lechatchila mishi yodea shatzibur misacher lispal mincha. If somebody knows that the minyan is going to be davening mincha late, muter shispal mincha b'yochid v'achar kach yikabel Shabbos. He should daven mincha as a yochid. There'll be plenty of time prior to Shkia to be kabel Shabbos, and then he's Makayim Bo. The Yalkut Yosef, the son of Rav Ovadia, offers a fifth approach that one may complete mincha and still fulfill the mitzvah of Tosef Shabbos by accepting Shabbos during Ben Hashmoshes, even after Shkia. L'chatchila roy likvoz man tfilas mincha b'erev Shabbos ke'esrim dakos kodem hashkia. He says the Gaboim should make sure that the Zman of Mincha is at least 20 minutes before Shkia. V'tzibur ha'magia b'erev Shabbos l'beis ha'knesses la'achar hashkia. Let's say the minyan assembles after Shkia. Mutar lam lispal mincha im chazras ha'shliach tzibur la'achar hashkia. They can daven mincha after Shkia because there are opinions that allow us to daven until tzeis. And V'lakabel Shabbos b'toch Yud Gimel Dakos v'chatzi shel achar Shkia. You have 13 and a half minutes after Shkia where you could still be Makabel Shabbos, because that's the earliest of the various shitos as when does Tzeis HaKachavim, when does that start? When is Bein HaShmashos over? So you gotta be Makabel Shabbos before at least that time. So it's 13 and a half minutes according to the Yalkut. If kol sheyesh tzorach b'davar, gam k'nei limno machlokas b'kerva kal, so there shouldn't be disagreement. It's recommended to consult with one's local rabbinic authority to determine the best course of action. If one finds himself in the situation of reciting mincha late on Friday afternoon, especially if it occurs on a regular basis.
This must be the opinion the Hasidim follow when they daven, mincha on
Late.
Shabbos late.
I think they're way beyond the 13 and a half minutes, Yaakov. They're going according to the Shitas that Tzeis HaKachavim starts 45 minutes after.
Yaakov is done mekav schus everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you, Walter. I appreciate it. You're absolutely right.
I like that. You know what? Yeah. Shivim panim l'Torah. What can we say?
In the summertime,
Absolutely.
Shabbos often begins very late, especially in Europe and North America. For this reason, many shuls accept early Shabbos. As we have seen in this year, one may accept Shabbos as early as the time of Plaga Mincha, which can still be relatively late on Friday afternoon. Here are some times of Chicago, London, and Beit Shemesh. So Chicago middays 12:51. Shkia was 8:27. So 20 minutes before suns was 8:07. Plaga Mincha 6:52. So you can't accept Shabbos prior to Plaga Mincha. So in Chicago, they can as long as they make their Kabbalah Shabbos after 6:52, they can start Mincha before, and then they'll be okay. Okay, London, you see, sunset is 9:19, candlelighting is 9:04, Plaga Mincha 7:35. So you have to daven about 8 o'clock. If you can't really daven earlier because you can't accept Shabbos earlier. Now, this is going to create major halachic issues because we're going to see. In fact, I've been emailing with Mark Shapiro based on some lectures that I've been listening to regarding, in Copenhagen and Alaska, places where, night might not be until 11 o'clock. So the tzibur, they accept Shabbos at 7 o'clock, way before Plaga Mincha. Question: how could they do it? Nobody says that you can accept Shabbos prior to Plaga Mincha. So,
Sorry.
right. So there's really no answer because it's the Hamon Am. It's like one of those things we learn in the Gemara. You cannot make a gzeira on the tzibur that the tzibur cannot withhold. And we're just silent about it. I think that we will probably go into a lot of this in the next. That's going to be the problem in places which are very north. How can you accept Shabbos prior to Plaga Mincha? You can't. So what that means, you could have Mincha, go home, and maybe come back for Ma'ariv after Plag. But the question is, do people really do that? Probably not. Walter, what were you saying?
No, I'm saying I was once in St. Petersburg for Shabbos, and Shabbos, it just never gets dark. So there's luck, just never gets dark.
Well, but there is a Zman. But let's say in London, there are times in June where in London it's going to be 11 o'clock. It's going to be very.
In St. Petersburg in June, I was there in June. Basically, you have the midnight sun. You have a midnight sun.
I don't think St. Petersburg is above the Arctic Circle, which is the definition of never getting dark. But there are places. I remember being
No,
in
it
Vancouver.
gets dark, but you have a midnight sun. But you have at midnight the sun is still out.
Okay, but there are places where it gets where there is a shkia, let's say at 11 o'clock.
Right.
And then Plaga Mincha would be 8:30. Well,
Yeah, the
the
Scandinavian
people are
countries.
not going back and davening Mincha and Kabbalah Shabbos at 9 o'clock. They're accepting it at 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock, going home to their families. Question is, how can they do that? They can't, but they have done it for hundreds of years, and we'll see whether anybody discusses that. Those who accept early Shabbos usually recite Ma'ariv before sunset. Now, we learned in volume 15, Shiurim 6 and 7, that there is some debate about the halachic guidelines for reciting Ma'ariv early, right? We're going to see, according to Rabbi Yehuda, so machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim, Rabbi Yehuda says as long as you daven Mincha before Plag, you can daven Ma'ariv after Plag, even before Shkia. According to the Chachamim, who argue with Rabbi Yehuda, you can never daven Ma'ariv before Shkia. But at least you have Rabbi Yehuda to rely on. So the Gemara Masechta Brachos derives the correct times for Mincha Ma'ariv from the practices of different Amirot. Rav Matzli Shul Shabbos Ber Shabbos Mivod Yom. Rav would daven Kabbalah Shabbos and Ma'ariv while it was still day. And Therefore, Shema Mina Halachik Rabbi Yehuda. Remember, the only way to be able to daven Ma'ariv prior to Shkia is based on the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda that says if you daven Mincha before Plag, you can daven Ma'ariv after Plag, even before Shkia. So then the Gemara says, Adarabba, Mid Rav Huna M'Rabanan, Lo Avimatzli Adurta. Rav Huna the Chachamim would not daven Ma'ariv Friday night until after Shkia. Shema Mina Ein Halachik Rabbi Yehuda. So, as we saw in the above shir, the Gemara concludes that since there is no definitive ruling, one may choose to follow either view. Many Rishonim stipulate that this applies only if the choice is made consistently, and one who sometimes davens mincha after plaga mincha should not daven ma'ariv until night. That means you cannot, it's called a tarta de satri. You cannot use contradictory rulings. That means you're going to daven mincha after plag, then you got to wait until shkia to daven ma'ariv. Because according to Rav Yehuda, you could only daven ma'ariv after plag if you daven mincha before plag.
But many shuls actually don't do that. And I mean, I know.
Yes, and we were malamet schut. Remember,
Yeah.
we were malamet schut.
Yes.
That
Right.
means we do both. That remember, but at Sibur is different. Remember, we said that Sibur, if it's Shasat Chak, whatever. There, we basically said you could rely on the Tarta de Satri, and
Right.
that's why some places they daven mincha after plug and they say mar before shkia. They don't necessarily wait until shkia.
Right.
However, but that's during the week, Yaakov. Sunday through Thursday.
No, even on Friday.
No, but
I mean,
but now the Friday night business will be different because there was a shita of Rav who
right.
davened Ma'ariv while it was still daytime. So it throws another wrench into it, and this is also the ruling of the Shulchan Aruch regarding the weekday Ma'ariv. Other issues not discussed here include the calculation of the time for plag, 1 hour and a quarter before evening, as opposed to the Grove calculates it as 1.25 halachic hours before sunset. The Magen Avraham calculates it at 1.25 hours before nightfall, meaning tseis, which makes the plag time later. And whether the husband may enter the house if candles are not yet lit, according to those who permit the household to continue performing malacha after the husband accepts Shabbos. And then there's further discussion. Okay. However, when it comes to Friday night, the Shulchan Aruch writes that we may daven earlier than we do during the week in order to start Shabbos early. Magdimim lispalel arvis yoiser mibimosachol. You can daven Ma'ariv even earlier than you daven during the week. As long as you're after plag, you can light candles, accept Shabbos, and daven Ma'ariv. The Magen Avraham points out that this distinction seems to run contrary to the Gemara quoted above, which used the practice of the Amaram on Friday night as a proof to the halacha during the week. Sarich iyud, the Gemara Amrinon, Miditzali Rav Shel Shabbos, because the Gemara brought the Amoira Rav, who davened Ma'ariv while it was still light for Shabbos. Shema Minod Halachik Rav Yehuda, Mashma the Rabbanan Osir. It means, according to the sheet of the Rabbanan who argue with Rav Yehuda, would be prohibited. The Kach Kosav Arosh, Sham, that everyone who davens early can Rav Yehuda severely. The Magen Avraham resolves this problem based upon the Bahag's explanation of the practice of Rav, that he davened early on Friday after accepting Shabbos early. The Magen Avraham explains that although the Chachamim would not have condoned this, the Gemara concludes that one may elect to follow the view of Rabbi Yehuda. On Friday night, you don't have to be consistent about which view one follows due to this added mitzvah of Tosefes Shabbos. Achar kach, this is the continuation of the Magen Avram. Motzati shekosov bahag v'zel shono. The Rav hachi savar. This is how Rav held. He boiled slushal Shabbos be'erev Shabbos matzli. If he wants to daven Ma'ariv erev Shabbos early, he can. Kloimar moisifin mechol ala kodesh. You can already accept Shabbos while it's still chol. Ad kam l'shoinai. V'tzarch loimar l'didei. For us, the mikaravu boil the mifshit Rav Dalok Rav Yehuda, that it seemed that the halacha that Rav was dealing with was only according to Rav Yehuda. La maskona, the boy Ovid Kemar, the Ovid Kemar, the maskona over there in bracha is you can do like either one. The key here says the Magen Avram Rishoy lahagdim be'erev Shabbos avol pisha b'chol. It's like Rabbanon. Even though normally you hold like the Rabbanon where you don't daven Ma'ariv only until after Shkia, erev Shabbos you can do different. V'chein das Rambam. Not like it's written in the Kesef Mishnah that there's no difference between Shabbos and the rest of the week. This is a long Magen Avram. The Magen Avram then adds another possible reason to differentiate between Shabbos and the rest of the week regarding the time for Ma'ariv, which relates to the time at which the Evorim Upedorim, the limbs and fats of the daily Kaponis, were burned. Nearly lases tuv tam, I can give a good reason. That filis arvis niskana keneged evorim torim. The takon of Ma'ariv was done. Remember, Shachris is based on the Tamid Shel Boiker, the daily Tamid offering. Mincha was established keneged the Tamid Shel Ben Arbayim, the daily Ola Satami that was offered in the afternoon. Then the limbs and the innards of that Tamid of the afternoon could be burnt all night. And that is what Tfilas Marv has been based on. That are consumed at night. Uvishabas Osir Litna. Now you cannot lechatchila put them on the fire on Shabbos. They have to be put there Mibod Yom. V'lo las chol b'Shabbos, right? You cannot offer an olas chol, right, a Friday afternoon on Shabbos. Kedisa b'Shabbos dav chav dalet. V'chiyotzu b'veis Yosef shema kolbo. Thus, the Magen Avram argues that since the limbs and fats must be placed on the mizbeach before Shabbos, it should be permitted to recite Marv on Friday night before dark as well. Listen. If Ma'ariv is connected the Evorim B'Dorim, and you have to put the Evorim B'Dorim on the Mizbeach from before Shabbos starts, then it makes sense to daven Ma'ariv early. So that's a very good shot of the Magen Avram. Finally, the Magen Avram points out that some authorities do not require consistency regarding the time of Mincha and Ma'ariv even during the week. Like Yaakov Yellen said, especially shuls. We're not makbid on this Tarta de Satri. We daven, the Tzibur gathers, and we're not that makbid about before and after Shkia. And this certainly may be relied upon on Friday night. However, when doing so, one must be particular daven mincha before Plag Mincha, at least on that Friday. So, since you're using the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda to be able to daven Ma'ariv before Shkia, you should at least fulfill the full sheet of Rabbi Yehuda, which is that you should not daven, that the last time that you may daven mincha is Plag Mincha. So the Gaboim should be, if we're davening early, we should make sure at least that the mincha is starting right before, should be starting before Plag Mincha. That's an important halach. V'oda Mordechai Kosev, the Rishai Lasos Pam Kain Upam Kain. Remember we said you shouldn't one day do it Rabbi Yehuda, one like you should be consistent, except occasionally you can do it. You can rely on this Mordechai. Miu, the soft moed cotton Kosev to be a mechad, and lasso shnei kule de satria dodi. In one day, you shouldn't go against Rabbi Yehuda. If Rabbi Yehuda told you can only daven Ma'ariv after Plag, if you daven mincha before Plag, you have to follow that. You can't use Rabbi Yehuda and daven mincha after Plag and daven Ma'ariv before Shkia. You can't do that. L'chein tzarich lizor b'erev Shabbos, let's follow mincha koydem Plag mincha. So that's the
Even
important.
that,
Yes, yeah.
even that, I remember Rabbi Simon in one of his shurim said that it was okay. But I mean, even that, many shuls will start 7 p.m. the entire summer, and thus they're davening mincha after Plag, and they daven Ma'ariv before Shkia. I mean, that's done, in many places. And as I said, I remember Simon saying that was
Okay, because there's a kula for that. We'll see. There may be a kula for the tzibur. You can see Yaakov clearly for the Mogen Avram that's not
correct.
the Chadchila. That's not how the Mogen Avram holds. Clearly. So the Mishnah Berurah is going to give us the leniency that Yaakov is talking about. The Mishnah quotes the Mogen Avram, but he quotes a more lenient opinion that allows a congregation to daven Ma'ariv early Friday night, even after davening Mincha after Plag. There it is. That's what you just said. That's based on this Mishnah Berurah. But it's nice to know what the ideal is and why that ideal exists. Right? Listen to what the Mishnah Berurah says. He concludes that this opinion should only be relied upon in times of need, and even then, one should not daven Ma'ariv before sunset. You should wait until Shkia. So Yaakov, at 7 o'clock, Baruch Hu will probably be said after Shkia. If they daven mincha at 7 and it's after Plag, they'll probably end up davening Ma'ariv after Shkia. Which
No, I don't think so. I mean, that's not the Metzias, because let's say Shkia is at 8:15 or 8:20, in June, after June 21st or before June 21st for a week, and there's
no, Shkia's not that. Shkia latest is like 7:40. Shkia. Tzeis is 8:20.
in LA.
No, the latest Shkia we had was like 7:41. Maybe 7:45, something like that. So it's still possible, like you're saying. 7 o'clock is after Plag, and if it's a very quick davening, they may end up davening Ma'ariv before Shkia. But what the Mishnah Berurah is saying, they should try to make their Ma'ariv at least after Shkia.
So sunset in Los Angeles on June 21st, which is obviously the latest, is 8:08.
Okay.
8:08. So if you daven at 7, which I've davened in Miyanim in LA, daven at 7, you're going to daven after Plag and Mincha and Ma'ariv before Shkia.
Okay, so we're going to learn that there is a lenient opinion that allows it, but it should only be done b'shas adchak. And even then, he says you shouldn't daven Ma'ariv before sunset. Rabbi Simon we're going to have Rabbi Simon here, right here, very shortly. We'll see how what he comes up with. First, the Mishnah Berurah. Yesh Omrim, the B'tzibur yesh lahakel, because it's tzibur. L'spal Ma'ariv me'bod yom, even before Shkia. Afim mispal mincha, achar Plag mincha. So here it is. It's a Yesh Omrim. The Bir Halacha, he quotes the Derech HaChaim, who explains that this is because other communities are not particular about following this contradictory practice even during the week. He concludes that this is difficult to rely on, as there is no source for this leniency in the Gemara. The Pri Yitzchak writes in a tshuva that contrary to the explanation of the Mogen Avram, according to the Bahag, even the Chachamim agree that one may daven Ma'ariv early on Shabbos. According to this, it would seem that this is permissible, even with davening Mincha after Plag. Let's just see the conclusion of the Mishnah Berurah. So the Mishnah Berurah says, don't rely on it. You see what he says? He says very clearly that if you davened Mincha after Plag, you should delay your Ma'ariv until when it's Ben Eshmoshes, which is after Shkia, and only in emergency. But you should not daven Ma'ariv when it's before Shkia. So for this reason, where possible, early minyanim on Friday night should be scheduled so that Mincha concludes before Plag, Kabbalah Shtabish starts just afterwards. This is the generally accepted practice in Eretz Yisrael. Although in the diaspora, many communities are not as particularly relying on the more lenient view quoted by the Mishnah Berurah, which is to daven mincha after plug. Some followers of the Vilna Gaon do not daven Mariv early, even on Friday night. The practice of the Mishnah Berurah was to daven only Shmona Esrei early, and to recite Kriyat Shema with its brachos after Tzeitzei Kochavim. In many communities, it is deemed more convenient and practical to set the time for mincha as being the same each week, rather than changing the time each week according to the fluctuations of plug. Rav Baruch Simon, I've had the pleasure of dealing with Rav Simon in halacha regarding tzudaka. He sometimes calls me and we discuss complicated urological issues. He's a wonderful posek. He actually sits in the library all day in Yeshiva University, and people come and ask shilas all day. Rav Simon. So Rav Simon defends the practice in many places in the Golah not to be particular concerning this issue. I'm a Magen Avram, shochich medivrei habag. Ulama Magen Avram kosav shafilo achi yizar ba'oso yom. Magen Avram said on that specific Friday, if you're going to rely on Rav Yehuda to daven Ma'ariv earlier, you should make sure to daven mincha before plug. I know Erev Shabbos is pal mincha kodem plug mincha shemitzvos to sefer Shabbos einem materes tarti desatri dechad yom. The fact that you're accepting Shabbos early and you're bekayim to sefer Shabbos, that doesn't allow you to break this rule of the tarti desatri, that you can't have it both ways. Ulam, efshar latzia, he says we could suggest those shuls, like Rav Yaakov said, that like in the valley that daven mincha after plag and daven Ma'ariv before shkia, that's the betarti desatri. Have a base. They had something to rely on. First of all, on the divrei chayim, shekosov shemishum tircha de tzibur, you can allow it. And ulay yesh gam makor lahakal betarti desatri b'chad yom al pi habahaganal. That based on the bahag, you can if it's a tzibur, you can do the tarta desatri. Shekivan shekaimalan sheyesh din tarta desatri miyom echad lechavero. You can, right, not on the same day, but even though on Monday you did this way, Tuesday you could do another way. Avol pichein hitir magen avram al pi habag lispal betarta desatri kazu mishum tosef Shabbos shafila betarta desatri b'chad yom shami. There are times where the tarta yomi one day would work. The near shitzona davar hu shemitzvos tosef Shabbos doiche iser shel tarta desatri. He wants to say that the mitzvah of tosef Shabbos overrides this prohibition of the tarta desatri. Rav Simon suggests a number of other sources allowing for leniency Friday night, as well as during other days as well, including Rav Yoshe Ber Soloveitchik, Rav Arn Soloveitchik, that the Rambam's wording with respect to Ma'ariv as ein medaktikin bismana, you don't have to be careful about it at the time, indicate that it may be recited early, irrespective of when recited mincha. So that's a deal in the Rambam. Must a wife accept Shabbos at the same time as her husband? We mentioned earlier in this year that if the whole community accepts Shabbos early, then one is obligated to follow the communal custom and accept Shabbos at that time as well. The poskim discuss whether the same applies to a husband and wife. In other words, if the husband joins the early Shabbos minyan in shul, must his wife light candles at the same time that he accepts Shabbos, at the end of the Chadodi, or may she wait until a later time? According to Rav Moshe Feinstein, the wife need not accept Shabbos at the same time as her husband, but nonetheless, it's proper for her to refrain from performing malacha for him after that time. L'chora pashut she'eina nigreres achrav. He thinks it's simple that she doesn't follow what he does. But she cannot do work on his behalf once he's accepted Shabbos. Whether he declared it verbally or didn't declare it verbally. That doesn't, just because he accepted Shabbos doesn't answer his wife. Perhaps the wife should be prohibited for doing malacha for her husband. She can't cook for him anymore. Madin, that you have to have your handmaid also not work. In light of the fact that, as discussed previously, others who have not accepted Shabbat may perform malacha on behalf of one who has, one might wonder why she may not perform malacha for her husband. Rav Moshe addresses this question later in the tshuva. He also suggests in the continuation that perhaps she should forbidden to do malacha after her husband accepts Shabbos due to the concept of a neder, to fulfill a certain practice, that his acceptance of Shabbos binds her as well. But he concludes that when one accepts Shabbos early, made out of convenience, as is common in the summer months when Shabbos begins late, that consideration does not apply. On the other hand, the Shevet HaLevi, Rav Vosner, is of the opinion that the woman must follow her husband. And at the moment that her husband accepts Shabbos early in the synagogue, she's also prohibited from performing malacha. She does get dragged by the Kabbalah of her husband, Baruch Hu Mizmor Shir. Rav Shraga Favish Schneelbag and Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach agrees with Rav Vosner, while Rav Moshe Sternbach, Shuvas Van Hagos, and Rav Belsky accept Rav Moshe's leniency. Okay. Contemporary Sephardic poskim have a similar disagreement. Rav Avodia Yosef writes that the wife is not compelled to follow the husband's acceptance of Shabbos. Says the Chazon of Adiyah, "V'chein abal shekibel Shabbos b'od yom, eina isha nigres achrav." She doesn't follow him. Umuteres b'asiyas malacha v'adlakas ner Shabbos. She can light candles. Doesn't make a difference what the husband did. Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, the other Sephardic chief rabbi after Rav Avodia Yosef, writes that she must follow her husband's acceptance. Im Adam olech lispalo mukdam be'erev Shabbos, beplaga mincha, ve'ishta mitakevet midlahadlik neros, and the wife has not lit candles yet. Kimofia beluach, he ain't a rishos lahadlik zaneros. She can't light candles. Elatzrich lahadlik lifnei shekiblu Shabbos. B'minyan shabbalim mispal. She has to know what time that shul accepted Shabbos, and she has to light before that. Shedin zeu k'madin shel yishuv. It's like one community. Reciting Kriyat Shema after nightfall and beginning the meal. A third issue that must be addressed with respect to early Shabbos pertains to Kriyat Shema. We learned in earlier sources that even if one recites Mar before nightfall, you have to recite Kriyat Shema after Tzeis. The same holds true on Friday night as well. The Shulchan Aruch rules that one may not eat a meal at night before reciting Shema. You may not start eating a meal half an hour before the time for nighttime Kriyat Shema. If so, is one permitted to begin the Friday night meal before reciting Shema a second time? The answer is inferred from the Mishnah Berurah, who qualifies that if one began the meal before the half-hour time, you can continue to eat and recite Kriyat Shema afterwards. Im hischil beheter. If you started your meal prior to half an hour prior to Tzeitzak HaChavim, afilu Kriyat Shema in a mafsik. You don't have to be mafsik in the middle of your meal to daven Kriyat Shema. As long as you have time to recite the Kriyat Shema. So for us, practically, as long as you're not within 30 minutes of Tzeitzak HaChavim, that's not very common. If we daven mincha at 6:30 and Seis is going to be 8 o'clock, 8:15, you're going to come home and eat your meal way before that, 8:30, way before the 30-minute cutoff. According to the Mishnah Berurah, did we learn? Yeah. According to Mishnah Berurah, then one may begin his Shabbos meal by reciting Kiddush Namotzi before sunset, and one may then continue his meal even after that time, and make sure to remember to recite Kriyat Shema at some point. What happens if you have not begun your meal by a half hour before nightfall? Is he allowed to start, or must he wait until after nightfall to recite Shema and then start it? In this case, the Mishnah writes that lechatchila you should wait until Tzeis. then recite Kriya Shema, then begin to kneel. But one who is lenient has someone to rely on. Im la'achar shespal mayir, ein ad alayla chatzi sha'ah. It's within 30 minutes of tzeis, yesh lizar shelo laschil lechol. You shouldn't eat your meal. Eliyantin ad ha'erev, wait until tzeis, yachzor v'yikra Kriya Shema, read Kriya Shema, below brachos, v'achar kach yoichal. Hoilo arbe poskim lo yatzei dei chavos Kriya Shema, kodem alayla, because according to many poskim, since we daven Ma'ariv before Shkia, and even if you daven Ma'ariv after Shkia, most say you should repeat your Kriya Shema after it says. If you're lenient, you don't have to protest. There's leniency. Let's finish with Machshava. Over the course of this year, we have learned about the significance of Tosefes Shabbos. This mitzvah has tremendous philosophical and spiritual significance as well, and many Machshava works expound on its importance. The Zohar writes, "May olam lo zaza shchina miYisrael b'Shabbosos v'yamim tovim v'afilu b'Shabbosos shel chol." The Shechina has never left us on Shabbos and Yom Tov. What does it mean, Shabbosos shel chol? Since when does Shabbos occur during the week? So Rav Shlomo Levenstein in Umataka Or cites the explanation of the Ksav Sofer that it refers to the time of Tosefet Shabbos. Ksav Sofer be'er ki Shabbos shel chol hi Tosefet Shabbos. Otanu mechuyavim losif b'knisha Shabbos v'yitzias. That which we are obligated to add both as Shabbos comes in and as it goes out, extra time. HaShabbos zu sha'adam moisif. This is Shabbos that human beings add. It's Eina Shabbos HaKadosh Baruch Hu tziva b'Torah. It's not commanded by Hashem. Kim tosefet sha'adam mosif matzmo. We added it ourselves. L'cheini nikra Shabbos shel chol. In Zos, Omer Azor HaKadosh afal zman zeh she'er Shechina. The Shechina is there as well. According to the Ksav Sofer, the time of Tosefet Shabbos contains great sanctity and holiness. The Ger Rebbe in the Pnei Shabbos extols the greatness of the time of Tosefet Shabbos, as well as writing that one can have all of his sins forgiven during that time. Isa kol Hashem Shabbos mechalalo mochalo. That means they play on words. Mechalalo means mochalo, he'll be forgiven. Halo yesh gem averis kasher shein moel tshuva. There are certain averis that the Rambam goes through that we're not even allowed to have tshuva on it. The Omer shlizem moel tosefet, even for these bad averos that the Rambam says you can't do tshuva for them, Tosefet Shabbos works. Ubir shal yedei sheyudi misala yosem imashu mechuyev. The Jew is going above what is commanded. Zochel mechila afal averos chamurus shemishur zadin lo mani tshuva saleim. Therefore, even though Mikra Din tshuva would not correct these averos, since we're going beyond, Hashem goes beyond. Leish Yisrael yesh koch losif bechol hakodesh v'tzarech mechuyev lasos ke. Rav Arlen Steinman constantly urged people to accept Shabbos early. And Rav Levenstein cites one of his letters. He says people do prohibited things in the few minutes before Shabbos. These malachas could go even after Shkia. He advises people to stop doing work 30 minutes before Shkia. The Yebezeh Toelas Gdola, the Zochel Rabim Gadol Ma'od. It's a great merit for the public. Although the last few moments of Shabbos, it tends to be a especially hectic time. Hopefully, studying the halachos of Tosefet Shabbos and developing an appreciation of the uniqueness and power of this time will serve as inspiration to properly fulfill this mitzvah and accept Shabbos each week at the proper time with the proper feeling. Any comments, questions, or aros? Next week, we'll start going through the tefillos. Mincha, and all the various tefillos of the Shabbos. Okay. Next week, same time, 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Navi Shir will be this Sunday night, 8 o'clock. To continue. Okay, have a good week, everybody.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yaakov,
Yes.
shkoyach for telling me that, but it's true that what you said, and I davened at that time, because I knew it.